Welcome back to Morning Joy, where truth matters. I'm Keith Downey, your host. And so what did it take for Jesus to bring Peter back after his denial? We're talking about the restoration of St. Peter and how it all relates to our own lives so we can do the next right thing with Debbie Georgianni and Adam Bly. Good morning, Debbie and Adam.
Thank you so much, Keith. Debbie Georgianni, Adam Bly here. We are the co-hosts of The Spirit World, heard tomorrow. That's 10 a.m. Central, 11 a.m. Eastern, talking about the all the doomsday predictions and prophecies that are circulating on social media. And Adam and I are going to dive deeply and spend the whole entire hour of The Spirit World tomorrow talking about it, so you don't have to be in fear any longer. You can live your best joy-filled life, and we want you to have that confidence, and that's important, and that's what God would want too. So that's a beautiful thing. But today, Adam, we're talking about the restoration of St. Peter. We all know of Peter's story of denying Jesus 3 times, and we all know what, how that made him feel and what that means. And then it's just so beautiful how Jesus is able to not only forgive and forget, but to elevate Peter. So I think that gives us just a huge amount of hope for all of us, because in this broken world, I think there are many times we consciously and unconsciously deny Jesus, walk away from Jesus, reject Jesus, forget about Jesus, and we feel guilty about it, and we're ashamed that we could even get to that point, and we chose the world over Jesus. So, Adam, we've got a lot to say about this on this Friday edition, but I did promise our Morning Joy listeners yesterday that I had a little surprise for them, just to keep them up to speed on things, because I know that the YouTube chats, and by the way, Adam, wave to everybody on social media, they always like to celebrate birthdays. Well, today is Adam Bly's birthday. So, Adam, happy birthday.
Oh, thank you, Deb. I am, I think, 54 years young at this point, born in 1970. So got to see the world before the internet. Got to see the internet come into being when I was about 13, is when bulletin boards started. I got to play outdoors. I was in the last generation that knows what the outside looks like.
You kicked the can down the street and had fun?
Yeah, we rode bikes in the dirt and, did real physical things. It was neat. That world is gone, but, you can still go see it in a museum, I'm sure, somewhere.
Well, Morning Joy is definitely a family, Adam. We've been journeying together since the beginning of this year of 2024, and it's so beautiful to every single weekday stay together. And so I know on behalf of all the Morning Joy listeners and everybody that contributes to the program, thank you for being such a key part of every single day, starting our day here on Guadalupe Radio Network and the other affiliates that carry the show. We appreciate you, Adam, and all the work that you do. So happy, happy birthday. Oh,
thank you. It's all Jesus. So what I wanted to talk about a little bit today, Deb, and see how you feel about this. But, a lot of us go through seasons of our life. It's really common, let's say, in the, the late teens and the 20s when we go away to college, if we have that benefit of going away to college or trade school or starting our lives separate from our family. A lot of us drift away from the faith. It's kind of such a pattern. It's really well known. And some people never come back. Some people come back when they get married, and then when mortality starts looming larger in life, they may come back to their faith because, you can't solve death on your own. But one of the things I think that keeps people away is that when they've been away for a little while, it almost builds up momentum, and it's like, well, I've fallen out of the habit of this, and underneath it all, I kind of feel like I've rejected God. I've let him down. Somewhere deep down, I know I didn't make myself. I didn't create myself. And somewhere deep down, I know I was made for something better than this, than just pursuing money or seeking, attention from other people, that type of thing. So the restoration of Peter, I think, is just such a powerful story for when you're in that season of life when maybe you feel like you've drifted too far from God. And of course, God is always yearning for you, is always reaching for you, is always giving you grace. But sometimes we don't feel that. Sometimes we've talked ourselves out of it all, and we don't know how to go back and basically say you're sorry and I love you. So let's hear Peter's story. So Peter's first denial, this is John 18:15-18. Now remember, before we start this, at the Last Supper, Jesus said, you're going to deny me 3 times. And of course, Peter was incensed by this, protesting, I never would, I never would, I never would. And we see a lesson in this, and that is when life gets tough, sometimes that's when we find out really where we're at.
And fear
with
sets
God.
in. And fear sets in.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. If we let ourselves be dominated by fear and threats and the difficulties of life, and this goes back to what we were talking about on Wednesday with Psalm 23, that's when we get into trouble, and that's where Peter gets into trouble here. So let's quickly take a look at this. Simon Peter and another disciple followed Jesus. Now the other disciple was known to the high priest, and he entered the courtyard of the high priest with Jesus. But Peter stood at the gate outside. So the other disciple, the acquaintance of the high priest, went out and spoke to the gatekeeper and brought Peter in. Then the maid who was the gatekeeper said to Peter, "You are not one of the man's disciples, are you?" He said, "I am not." Now the slaves and the guards were standing around a charcoal fire that they had made because it was cold, and they were warming themselves. Peter was also standing there, keeping warm. So here we see he hangs back. The confrontation with the high priest is coming, and Peter hangs back, and he denies that he is his disciple. So now let's move on to John 18:25-27. This is where Peter's going to deny him a second and a third time. Now Simon Peter was standing there, keeping warm, and they said to him, "You are not one of his disciples, are you?" He denied it and said, "I am not." One of the slaves of the high priest, a relative of the one whose ear Peter had cut off, said, "Didn't I see you in the garden with him?" And again Peter denied it, and immediately the cock crowed. And that's a reference to Jesus. It said, "By the time the cock crows, you will deny me 3 times." So here we see fear, a lack of trusting in God when under pressure. Now let's move on to John 21:15-17. This is the restoration of Peter by Jesus. When they had finished breakfast, Jesus said to Simon Peter, "Simon, son of John, do you love me more than these?" He said to him, "Yes, Lord, you know that I love you." He said to him, "Feed my lambs." He then said to him a second time, "Simon, son of John, do you love me?" He said to him, "Yes, Lord, you know that I love you." He said to him, "Tend my sheep." He said to him the third time, "Simon, son of John, do you love me?" Peter was distressed that he had said to him a third time, "Do you love me?" And he said to him, "Lord, you know everything. You know that I love you." Jesus said to him, "Feed my sheep." Such a powerful story. We can unpack a number of things here. I know we're coming up in a few minutes to our break. But we see 3 times Jesus asked, of course in line with the 3 times Peter had denied Jesus. Now this is after his resurrection that Jesus is restoring Peter. So Peter now encounters God in a particular way, realizes that it all was true, realizes probably for the first time what Jesus was talking about when he would speak to the disciples about how the Son of Man had to be crucified and die and would be raised. In some sense, they were all in despair until they saw the resurrection. And so here we see a restoration that how can we participate in this? Well, we're not destined to be the first pope as Peter was. It was not only a restoration, but it was a reaffirmation of the role that Jesus had given him. He had said, you will be known as Peter, the rock upon which I will build my church. He was appointed the leader of the apostles previously in their public ministry. And here is a restoration, not only of his relationship with Jesus through love, but his role to feed my lambs, tend my sheep, and feed my sheep. So this is a reference to him being responsible for caring. Now this harkens back to our show on Wednesday yet again, Psalm 23, the role of the shepherd. To feed the lambs, to tend the sheep, to feed the sheep is a reference to the shepherd. This is very, very interesting because it is pointing out how the role of the Holy Father for us as the vicar of Christ on earth is to largely take the kind of the worldly expression of God's shepherding of us is taken on by the Pope through the Church to provide that shepherding, that protection from heresy, from misunderstanding, to bring the grace through the sacraments to the world, to provide so much while Jesus is in heaven before his final coming, to act as the instrument of God in the world. And so this restoration was personal, but also was global and universal in the sense of the Church.
Wow. Amazing. Adam, you are quite good at diving into Scripture and really taking it line by line and letting us just enter into the story and to understand it better. I want to compliment you, not because it's your birthday, but because you're very gifted in that area as well, and it really helps us, I believe, to understand it better. But let's hold it right there, because in about less than 30 seconds, we're going to send it back to Keith. He's got some announcements, and then we'll have the final segment where we'll talk more about Peter's denial and his restoration and his reclaiming everything and just being incredible a leader of our church. So let's put a pin in it right there, and we'll send it back to Keith.
Thank you so much, Debbie, and a big happy birthday goes out to Adam Bly. I had to hold my tongue. It was difficult. I didn't want to give the surprise away, but I especially wanted Debbie to mention that. So a big happy birthday to Adam. I also liked how he mentioned being part of the last generation who played outside. I get it. I was a millennial. I am a millennial, I guess. I still am. We played outside long enough to earn time playing the Super Nintendo, which that was just motivation, I guess, to jump on the TV. But that's neither here nor there. A quick reminder that Morning Joy and The Next Right Thing is like your daily companion, offering you faith, wisdom, and authentic Catholicism. So you might be a parent out there that might not have the full attention span to listen on the radio or stream on, say, YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn. I said LinkedIn. We're not on LinkedIn yet. We will be. But maybe podcasting makes it a little bit easier, where you can have it on your phone, pause when you need to, and continue listening and not be staring at a screen. We have that offer just for you, right? Just search Morning Joy on anywhere you listen to your podcast at. But coming up next, we're exploring even more of the restoration of St. Peter and how it all relates to us so we can do the next right thing. Coming up right here on Morning Joy, where truth matters.
You're listening to Morning Joy, where truth matters.
Welcome back to Morning Joy, where truth matters. I'm your host, Keith Downey, and we are continuing this great conversation on the restoration of St. Peter and how it all relates to our own lives. On today's final segment of The Next Right Thing with Debbie Georgianni and Adam Bly. Debbie and Adam, take it away.
Okay, thank you so much, Keith, for sending it back to us for the final segment of this Friday edition of The Next Right Thing. Don't forget, tomorrow we have an incredible Spirit World planned for you tomorrow, 10 a.m. Central, 11 a.m. Eastern. Tell all your friends. Find us on Facebook, YouTube, everywhere, and you can add some comments, questions, whatever you want us to add to the next September mailbag. So, Adam, why don't you continue about Peter's journey, and I think it really let's really talk and go back and forth about how it applies to us today, because so many of us have either consciously or unconsciously denied Jesus, rejected Jesus. So we want to make sure that we go into the weekend, Adam, with people feeling very at peace and very confident that they can say they're sorry, they can reconcile, they can restore their place, okay, win God's favor, feel confident about that, know that God has forgiven them, all will be well, and move forward.
Exactly. So what are the ways that we have denied Jesus, or sometimes we do deny Jesus? There are little simple ways, like that moment when you're sitting alone in a coffee shop or a restaurant and you're about to eat, and do you pause for a moment? Do I make the sign of the cross and say grace in this public place? Is somebody going to look at me funny? Am I going to, is somebody going to be offended? Is it going to, you get self-conscious just a tiny little bit. And there's that question of, do I hide this? Do I pretend to not be religious just to avoid the possibility that somebody might have a negative reaction? That they're probably not going to say anything, but just that idea that somebody could be offended is a little denial of Jesus. But what about the bigger ones? Do I deny his call to attend Mass? Do I say no to the sacramental union with him that he wants for me? That is the primary way that grace enters my life now that I'm past my baptism and confirmation. The main engine of grace for me is the Mass and receiving the Eucharist. Am I denying him and walking away from that and pretending that I'm not a baptized Catholic who is confirmed, who is required to go to Mass? But it's not because of the requirement. I should be joyfully grateful to go to Mass. And am I denying him there?
And can I just add a couple things here, just to add on to what you were saying here? Also, our words are very powerful. So when we say things to our friends and family members that we have to go to Mass, that's not cool, folks. We get to go to Mass. It is something that we should absolutely hold near and dear and strong in our hearts and in our minds and in our souls. It's not a have to. It's we get to. It's a true privilege and gift.
Yeah, exactly, and that's where, Deb, you're way ahead of me, because that's exactly what the restoration is about. So, another one we could find parallels with. Didn't I see you in the garden with him? Mm-hmm. Were you an active Christian earlier in life? Didn't I see you? You used to be religious. You used to talk about Jesus. You used to go to church. Didn't I see you doing those things? And to deny our history with God, even if we have fallen away or we're denying him now, to even deny the history with him, which is that other denial that Peter did, like right. a specific denial that I didn't walk with him. So the restoration that God offers us is always available, and yet another link back to Psalm 23, to have the soul restored by God. We talked on Wednesday about the Psalm 23 and the restoration of the soul that God gives us. Well, here's the restoration of Simon Peter's soul. He asks him, in proportion to the denial, do you love me? But then the follow-up, it's not just the words, right? It's not just, just say it and it's true.
Right.
He says, show me. So he says, do you love me? Peter protests, yes, I love you. He then says, do something.
Mm-hmm. Walk the walk and talk the talk.
Yeah,
mm-hmm.
Feed my lambs. Get to work. Ask him again, do you love me? And he protests and says, yes, I do. Tend to my sheep. Finally, Lord, you know everything. You know that I love you. Jesus says to him, feed my sheep. Jesus doesn't say, okay, that's good enough, Peter.
Right. You're back in the friendship circle. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's, you are with me again. You're walking with me again, but the walk with me isn't to sit back and I'm going to feed you grapes and then I'm going to give you heaven. It is to pick up your cross and follow him and do the work that he put you on earth to do. He put Peter on earth to be the first pope, to be the leader of the apostles, and gave him this authority. Now, for us, as we said, we're not the pope, but we do have jobs that God has given us. If you're a parent, you have to feed your children, tend to your children. If you are a teacher, you have to spiritually feed and teach your students. You have to tend to them. You have to care for them. You know, if you're in some ministry where you're helping, you know, people, the poor, if your job involves providing some service or care for people in any way,
take it seriously. Yeah,
you take it seriously. You do it in love. Even what seems like regular secular work can be done with love, can be done in a Christ-like way. And it gets back to what you said, Deb, and it's not that church is a sigh and I have to go do this. It's a joyful thing to walk with Jesus. We will realize that at some point. If you're not feeling it right now, you will realize it. He's asking us to get back to work. We've fallen away, and not in a mean way, but you show your love is the point. And so God wants us to show our love to him, not just say that we love him.
Right. And get back to work to get back to him. So in that work that we do on a daily basis, we're working our way back to God. I remember in religious education, the teens used to say to me all the time, Miss Deb, what's it all about? What's the goal? I said, we came from God. Our job is to get back to God and bring as many souls as possible. And that's what we're trying to do here on Morning Joy, to reach as many souls as possible. That's why we tell people to spread these broadcasts far and wide, because you're part of the evangelization effort. We're all part of it. It's the body of Christ trying to build up the body of Christ. And yeah, there's so much to say about this, Adam. Let me just check with our wonderful producer how many minutes we have. I think 1 or 2. We have 1 minute, Adam. So Adam, that was excellent. I'm so glad we chose this topic for the Next Right Thing. Please, folks, check us out on the Spirit World tomorrow, 10 a.m. Central, 11 a.m. Eastern. And Adam, again, I opened with this. I have to close with this because this is your birthday. Happy birthday. We hope you make it a very, very special day. You know, take the day off or something, Adam, for once in your life, okay?
I will. God bless you, Deb, and thank you.
Oh, thank you, Adam. Okay, with that, we're going to send it back to Keith Downey, our great host, for the rest of Morning Joy. Take it away, Keith.
Alrighty, thank you so much again, Debbie and Adam. And it's so easy to say, I'll never deny Jesus like Peter did. And yet here we are. I know when I worked in corporate America, there were times when we had luncheons in kind of boardroom type settings. And so it was very tempting to not pray, or at least do the sign of the cross to before we ate, because I didn't want to draw attention to myself. But then I realized I'm not drawing attention to myself. I'm drawing attention to Jesus, which people severely need. So don't feel you're alone out there, right? And speaking of feeling alone, you don't have to be this Saturday when we're talking about the spirit world. Now, for centuries, Christians have grappled with the concept of the end times, with predictions and prophecies abounding. And even today, there's rumors, speculation about impending disasters that continue to circulate, fueled by the internet and, of course, social media. So what does the Bible actually say about the end of the world? What is the official teaching of the Catholic Church? And how should we interpret these private revelations? Well, you're just going to have to join us Saturday, that's tomorrow, on the Spirit World at 10 a.m. Central for a deep dive into these questions. And if you want to watch Debbie and Adam while they're going through these questions, you can certainly find them by searching The Spirit World on YouTube, Facebook, X, TikTok, or just search GRN online as they produce the show. Coming up next, though, one of the deepest and most moving songs about the Eucharist. We're talking about that on Notes of Truth with Julie Carrick coming up after this break right here on Morning Joy, where truth matters.
You're listening to Morning Joy, where truth matters.